How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
What about you? You doing well?
Yes, the water's great.
Awesome, glad to hear that. Where are you guys from?
Philadelphia,
Philadelphia.
Pennsylvania.
Okay, cool, cool. So let me ask you something. What do you think about animal abuse?
I'm actually a vegetarian because I do not support it.
Oh, cool, cool. So what do you think about like the egg dairy industry? You think that's animal abuse?
What do you mean?
What happens in the egg and dairy industry?
I actually really don't know much about it,
You,
but
you consume dairy and eggs?
no.
No?
Well, dairy, but not eggs.
Okay, dairy. What about you? You are also vegetarian? Are you carnist or what?
Depends on the day, not gonna lie, but
You do eat animals?
yeah, I support
Animal hater.
free range. Like there's the chickens that are caged and stuff, but the ones that roam around and have good lives. Then
So
I-
you repeat that. The mic was
oh yes, yes, I said I support close. Oh, close. Okay, sorry. Hold on. Let me. I support the eating of animals as long as it's done under appropriate and what's the word? Humane circumstances. You know.
So let me ask you something. Would you have that same attitude about eating human products? Let's say we were like to group a bunch of humans and like keep them in small farms and then humanely like Holocaust those humans. Would you be willing to consume those products too, or would you say that's immoral to support?
I would say that's immoral. I would not eat animals. I mean humans. We are.
So my question is, what is it different between us and animals that would like justify that differential treatment? Like, what's true of animals that if it was true of us would make you have that same attitude?
Well, arguably there's not a big difference, but animals can't speak. We don't know how they process emotion, so it's easier to just like kind of not think about it and ignore it and eat them because they're there and we need food, and people just like eating chickens and cows and meat.
Okay, so you said something about them not being able to talk and them not we not being like 100% sure how they're able to process emotions and stuff like that. Would you agree that that's also true about some humans? Like there's some humans that can't talk, and like for example, there's intellectually disabled humans that we can't know for sure how they process emotions.
Um, to a degree, yes, but there are also, like parts of the brain and a bunch of studies you can do and like scans to figure out how these people do feel. Even, in like vegetative states, there are ways that they can communicate, just not verbally. And unfortunately, we can't do that with animals. So it's just, like I said, easier to pretend like they don't feel anything, even though we know they do, just so, we benefit.
But what if we like hypothetically we found that like a bunch of humans that were like intellectually disabled to the degree of animals, they had like the same cognitive abilities as animals, the same degree of processing emotions as animals. Would you be in favor of like systematically breeding and killing those humans for food, or would you be against that as well?
I would be against that as well, and I think it just comes down to we're the same species. So even if they are, on the same level as animals, they're not when it comes to like, like I said, species.
So it's like a species distinction that you think puts us like a superior level than animals. What do you mean by species? Like just like a biological definition, like us being like Homo sapiens, being able to. Okay, so what about if there's like happen to be like another sapient species around, not our species. Let's say Neanderthal were still around or something like that. Would you have the same attitude where it would be fine to farm Neanderthals and Holocaust them for food?
No, and I don't think that would be necessary with all the animals we have now that we're already okay with eating, and there's plenty of them.
Yeah, the question of necessity is separate, right? We don't need to eat animals either. We have plants. So what do you mean by necessity? If we don't need to eat animals in the first place, we can just eat plants. Why not just choose the non-sentient beings instead of harming and abusing animals?
I think that would probably be the best option, but considering that, since the beginning of, Homo sapiens, we've been eating meat and chicken, and it's just ingrained into us, and at a specific part in evolution, meat was essential for, neurological development, and that's probably not true anymore, but it's just, in our nature, and not enough people care to stop it, and since these animals are here, like, why not eat them,
And do you think that's like a good enough justification just because we've been doing it for a long time? Or would you say that's like an appeal to tradition fallacy or like an appeal to nature fallacy? Because not necessarily because we've been doing something for a long time makes it okay. Like we've been doing we did slavery for a long time. Slavery wasn't fine. So why harm beings like that if we can just eat plants? Like would you say that, for example, because you mentioned like tradition or like biological instinct or something like that, if we were like cannibalistic, for example, if our species was it was in our genes to practice a little bit of cannibalism sometimes, would you, and we practice it for a long time, we've been doing it for a long time, would you say that it would be fine to keep paying for that? Or would you say that there would be like a moral obligation to stop doing that and choose something else instead of humans?
I would say that there would be a moral obligation to stop doing that, but I think it just comes down to people being selfish and not wanting to change. I don't think that just because we've been eating animals for hundreds or thousands or however many years doesn't mean it's like a good enough reason to continue doing that, but people don't want to change. I think that's what it boils down to.
What about you? Do you want to change? Do you see like a moral obligation to go vegan?
Honestly, it's not that I wouldn't go vegan, it's just that it's more difficult, especially, like I'm a college student and stuff. There's all these places that serve, like chicken and beef, and I did try going vegetarian for a certain amount of time, but then I was suffering because I wasn't eating enough because there wasn't enough available. So I think if there were more options and it was easier, then more people would be willing to switch over. But right now, being vegan and vegetarian is almost like what's the word? Like problematic. It's more complicated.
So I have a couple of questions. Like, do you think your convenience is more important, like, than their lives? Because it is possible to be vegan. Maybe you have to inconvenience yourself a little bit more, or something like that. I think it's super easy to be vegan. I'm also a college student, but or do you think like their lives is more important than our convenience? And like, if we were to compare our inconvenience to their torment in those factory farms or even those small farms, we're murdering them at the end. We're putting them in slaughterhouses anyway. Do you think that compares to our convenience? Like, or would you say like it's like an obligation to inconvenience ourselves a little bit to not support that sort of thing?
I think it just comes down to priorities. Like you mentioned you're a college student and you said it's easy for you, but it's personally hasn't been that easy for me. So, if it comes down to me having like an exam tomorrow and I need to eat and have fuel, and there are no shops open that have enough like nutrients, that have like tofu or like beans or some other vegetarian product that I can eat, then it would just be smarter to make that decision to eat like chicken or beef or whatever non-vegan product it is for my benefit in that moment. And I think, at certain times I can quote unquote inconvenience myself to make that decision, but it's just, like I said, unrealistic, at least for me, to do it completely and all the time, especially because it's more expensive too.
Well, that's actually not factual. Like all the cheapest foods are all plant-based. Like stuff like what the poor of the poor eat, stuff like rice, beans, lentils, potatoes. It's all super cheap. But either way, like I don't think you had that same attitude not in the human context, because you said like there's something special about our species. But let's say we were to switch all the animals that you're currently eating with like Neanderthals, another species of sapient being or like an intelligent alien. Would you have that same attitude where you would like, I'm not gonna inconvenience myself, I'm just gonna continue as a college student to eat these Neanderthals? Or would you say it would be like obligatory to stop overnight consuming like Neanderthals?
I think that's somewhat of like a different question, because Neanderthals, like they look like me, so even if they are on the same level as animals in whatever context, like intellectually or emotionally or like biologically, they still look like me, which makes it like morally more difficult. But growing up, like we've just been taught that these are animals and they live to serve us essentially. And I'm not saying I agree with that. That's just kind of how it's being taught or how it has been taught previously. And I think there just needs to be there need to be more people that care enough to make a change, that have the time, money, and resources to do that.
But I guess my question was more in principle. Like, let's say some beings like didn't look like at all like us, but they had like minds identical to us, and that's what you're eating right now. Let's say they lie to you all this time. Instead of eating chickens, you're actually eating beings that have minds identical to us but look nothing like us. Would you have that same attitude where you would like continue doing that just because you don't see yourself inconveniencing yourself too much?
I mean, of course not. Like, if there was evidence showing that, we are on the same, like, if chickens had the same mindset as us, or they had the same capacity to think to even some degree that we do, then that would be a completely different story, But as of now, it's just that these are animals that are like dumb, and they just like walk around and eat grass and stuff, and it's unfortunate that there are these farms where these cows and chickens are just locked in these really, really small cages, and they live to, produce eggs or produce milks. And it's horrible to think about, but I think that's a thing that people don't actually think about what happens. There's a lot of like podcasts and documentaries on it, but people don't really watch them, probably because, like I said, they don't want to change and they don't want to acknowledge the issue, because then they would have all these, maybe have these thoughts of the questions that you're asking to themselves.
But why would you throw something around like dumbness? Like, do you really think that's the thing that separates us morally? Because there's dumb humans, right? There's intellectually disabled humans. You wouldn't say it's okay to Holocaust them, right?
No, I think it's just, like I said earlier, because these animals don't look like us, and because they are, like, look at these pigeons. like they're just, they're not having any conversations. They're just walking around, they're looking for food, but they're not smart enough to know where it's at or how to get it. And so
there's some humans like that too, right? There's some humans that are not smart enough to. Let's say that, like, hypothetically we found like a group of beings that didn't look anything like us, but had minds identical to intellectually disabled people that we care about right now in society. Would you be fine eating them? Let's say you were eating them right now. Would you see an obligation to stop doing that, or would you continue doing it because they're dumb, they can't like find food for themselves or whatever?
I mean, me personally, I wouldn't eat them because, like I've mentioned before, they look like me, so that would just make me...
No, they don't look like you in the hypothetical. Nothing like you, but they had minds identical to intellectually disabled humans.
Like a chicken that has a human mind, you're saying? Like, for example?
It doesn't have to be a chicken. I'm just saying, like, imagine the sort of mind that an intellectually disabled human would have, and put that in another body, and another species. Would you find yourself being okay with eating those sort of beings?
No, I don't think it all comes down to like intellectual capacity, because if you think about like squids, we eat like squid, and they're really, really smart. Squid and octopus.
You're okay with eating that too?
I don't know. I'm kind of weird about eating seafood. Salmon's really good though. I like salmon. Is this so?
Yeah, taste pleasure doesn't justify murder though.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you need your omega-3 vitamins, and
Where does it come from?
Fish
So,
oil?
yeah, I just see like a sort of like contradiction, or you view like an inconsistency, because you wouldn't like you wouldn't eat like beings that look nothing like us but had minds identical to intellectually disabled people. But when we're at that level, we're talking like beings like animals. You wouldn't eat something like an animal, but just because it has a mind identical to intellectually disabled human, you wouldn't eat it. But you don't know if animals have minds identical to some existing intellectually disabled humans right now. So I sense like an inconsistency there in your view. But I'm just saying, like, if we had two worlds, a world in which we keep doing this perpetually to animals, or another world in which we stop doing this, the world goes vegan, we stop like systematically breeding and killing animals, what would be a better world?
Oh, obviously, the one where animals aren't eaten and stuff. I fully support that. Just me personally, it's not as feasible as one might think, and for a lot of other people too, like maybe like low income households. You're making a good point how there are foods that are cheap, that are vegan, like rice and beans.
All the cheapest foods are all vegan. Yeah.
Yes, but rice and beans might not be as like sustainable or as nutrient rich as like chicken. And arguably, if you buy, let's say,
you can find all the essential amino acids in plant-based foods like rice, beans, lentils, potatoes, stuff like that. As long as you're consuming enough calories and you're eating an adequate, like, balanced diet, you'll be fine. People can survive out of like potatoes alone, stuff like that. But the thing is, I just don't see like a justification, because you agree that veganism would be morally superior, but then you have like this empirical question about whether or not it would be possible for you to do it sustainably, or like in if you're like in an economic it would be like economical for you to do it. I think it would. I think if you really see it as something morally superior, and even an obligation, you do see it as an obligation too, to stop doing these sort of things to animals, right?
That would be the most ideal option, you know. I don't know about going fully vegan, because vegetarian would be nice, but going vegan, that's a lot more difficult, especially when it comes to like clothes and stuff, and like fabrics and materials. It's a lot of research and a lot of effort and a lot of time, and that would be great if I had, you know, the resources and all of that to make that.
I would say it's super easy. If you think about the victims, you put themselves in their place and you say, would I want this sort of thing to? It's like basically boils down to the golden rule. I wouldn't want this sort of shit done to me if I was an animal. So why do that to them? It's super easy. You can just, maybe you have to inconvenience yourself a little more than usual because the world is not fully vegan yet. The options are less, but it's completely possible. It's doable. It's economical. I sense that you have some disagreements about this.
I just don't think it's completely, I would say, affordable option, because you can't live on beans, rice, lentils. I have to go out and buy fake meat. I get around 4 patties. That's like 2 meals for like $10. You think that's economical?
What do you mean you can't? What do you mean you can't live out of rice and beans?
Do you know my body would like literally probably deteriorate if all I ate was rice and beans?
Well, that's an empirical question. Do you have evidence to support that claim that somebody can't live out of cheap plant-based foods?
Do you have evidence that I can?
Sure. Yeah.
You can live off of rice and beans. It's not can you. It's like, is that like, would someone want to? You know, like that doesn't sound like a good life, just eating rice and beans. But to your argument, you know, if you have to make that sacrifice in order for these beings to not be harmed, then that's a personal choice that someone would have to make.
Yeah, the way I see it, like sensory pleasure, something like taste pleasure doesn't justify doing that to animals. Like, yeah, sure, of course I would eat rice and beans before murdering somebody, but yeah, like you definitely can live out of all these cheap plant-based alternatives. Like the poor of the poor have been living out of this for millennia. Stuff like rice, beans, potatoes, stuff like that. So, what's the disagreement exactly? What's the disagreement?
I just don't think I don't think it's always an affordable option, and I don't think it's really valuable to say that people should have to live on rice and beans. I will agree that, like, I've seen documentaries where, like, they'll literally, I don't know if it's cows or pigs or whatever, but they'll, like, tie them up and slit them down their stomach and let them bleed out. Like, that's just completely unnecessary. I think maybe that they should be able to live their life to the fullest, and then when they're getting sick or they're getting old, maybe then we could use them. But I don't think we should be like doing that, and I also don't think it's reasonable to say just live off rice and beans just because it might be easy for you to do.
So let me ask you something. Like, you think like morality for you doesn't have a price? Like, let me phrase that differently. Like, you think like it would be justified to harm other beings just because it's more convenient to you to do it? Like, let's say you have 2 options: live out of rice and beans, or like rice and beans and humans. Well, and it would be like for some reason cheaper. Let's just assume for the sake of argument it's cheaper to eat humans. Would you do that, or would you rather just leave out of rice and beans?
I think it's kind of a little different to compare humans to animals, slightly.
Okay, so what would be the like, what's true of animals that what's true of humans would make you have that same attitude?
Well, I mean, just like, let me think. Just like on Earth, like we serve, I don't want to say they don't serve a purpose, but like chickens, for example, they lay eggs all the time. Us eating their eggs, what does that do?
Yeah, the problem with eggs is not just like picking up a random egg, a discarded egg or something like that. It's the exploitation in the industry. Like, you have to breed these birds into existence, and then the males, for example, are useless to the industry. What do you think happens to them?
Right.
Yeah, they get thrown on a blender or get asphyxiated, like fully conscious. So
that's what I don't agree with.
Yeah, so that's the sort of thing you support as a ovo lacto vegetarian. If you eat eggs, that's the sort of thing you support. It's about the exploitation thing. It's not like I would admit that it's conditionally vegan to eat an egg. Like it's like a discarded egg in the middle of nowhere. I don't see an ethical issue with that, but it's the fact of that we're breeding these beings into existence. The females get exploited. What happens to the females when they can't produce any more eggs?
They're killed.
Yeah, they're all killed, and there's different types of birds. They're not the same as meat birds, which are the broilers. The layers, they can't produce enough meat, so they just get murdered and thrown away. So it's insane. So why support that sort of thing? And dairy industry is the same thing. We forcibly impregnate these cows because they can only produce milk if they're pregnant. You know, the males, the babies are separated from the mother. The males are murdered for veal. The females are exploited lifelong until they can produce no more. It's murder as well. So that's would you agree that that's animal abuse, what we do to cows in the dairy industry?
Killing them?
Exploiting them in general.
Hmm?
Yeah, sexual exploitation. Because I don't know if you've seen how they. It's a process called artificial insemination. It's how they impregnate them. It's horrific. They
You asked if I think that's humane.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, but did you personally support that, right, with your money?
I never said I support that. I don't buy
Dairy?
I get almond milk. I don't know if that's
Okay,
counts.
so you don't. So you're not a vegetarian. You're vegan.
No.
So what doesn't make you vegan right now?
I have cheese time to time.
Yeah, well, then you support that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like if you pay for cheese, you're saying yes with your money to that. Like you're creating demand for that sort of thing. So would you agree that that's unethical and you maybe should look into not buying any more cheese?
Yes.
Yeah.
But yes.
So you don't see any justification to support the dairy industry?
Justification? No. I just personally, like my sister said, I try to go vegan too, and it is a little hard. I have a lot of limitations to what I can and cannot eat. So when I then go as far to say, oh, I also can't eat cheese, I can't eat milk, it really gives me a very slim amount of foods that I could eat. And that's not an excuse
But
for
there's
saying...
actually thousands of plants to choose from. You're eliminating cheese, which is secretions from a random mammal. There's thousands of plants to choose from.
Like
But
what?
which ones are that are actively in your normal regular grocery store?
For example, I don't know, soybeans, tofu, wheat gluten, which is seitan. There's two alternatives, meat alternatives that are very cheap, like tofu and seitan. You can buy in bulk. You can buy a bunch of wheat gluten and make seitan, which has more protein than steak. And all the essential amino acids that we need to survive can all be found in plants. I don't know if you look into the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics peer-reviewed statement on plant-based diets. They're not only nutritionally adequate throughout all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, childhood, including for athletes, but they also provide health benefits against deadly diseases, shit like cancer, diabetes, heart disease. Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. You can look up their peer-reviewed statement on vegan diets. It's according to all the available evidence. That's by the way, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is the largest organization of nutritional experts and dietitians. And they came to the conclusion that plant-based diets are nutritionally adequate as long as you're eating enough calories and you supplementing B12. That's the one thing can be found naturally in plants is B12. It's from bacterial origin, animals, ruminant animals, get that from the soil and then we kill and eat them. But instead of doing that, we can just take a supplement. In the factory farms, we supplement them before killing them because they're not eating directly from the soil anyway. So.
I think it also an interesting thought is population control for these animals. During certain seasons in certain countries, you have you hunt deers. Because if you don't, then they're gonna overpopulate and take over certain areas. So if we just hypothetically speaking, if we never killed cows and chickens, they would take up some space that we might need. So then
if we never killed cows and chickens, but we're breeding them into existence in the first place, right? So if more people went vegan, what would happen? We would breed less and less of these animals into existence until eventually we stop breeding them. If the world goes vegan.
That's controlled breeding though, so they're kept in a confined space. But if we just never killed any of them, then they would keep breeding on their own as well. And then obviously they're not going to be in like every place of the world. Like they're never going to be here. I mean, well, I guess they could evolutionarily
Yeah,
speaking.
but the specifically the animals of the dairy and meat industry, they're artificially selected. They're bred into existence, so they're domesticated. They're not just around in the wild. So and even in animals in the wild, I don't think it's justified to go around killing like deer. I think there are alternatives to killing them, like sterilizing them and stuff like that. Like what's the most overpopulated animal? It's human beings, right? I'm not in favor of shooting up like schools and shit like that, right? So why would I do that to deer?
Yeah, that's a good point. The sterilization that a lot of people probably don't think about. I guess maybe, if you bring up that point, you have to take into consideration like how feasible that would be. Which, honestly, it's probably not that difficult. But then it comes down to certain cities or governments or whatever wanting to allocate their resources to do that. And if they don't see it as an issue, then why would they do it? And if they're okay with killing these cows and stuff, then they're not going to put this effort into sterilizing them and stuff.
Yeah, so let me ask you: you think it's obligatory to go vegan? Like, if you were to like educate yourself, because you seem you weren't like certain what happens in the dairy and egg industry. That we can share a documentary with you and shit like that. What happens there? But would you see it now like as obligatory to go vegan?
I mean, what he said about like raping the animals, that is very upsetting because I did not know that.
We'll see it.
I've seen the videos of them cutting them and stuff, and that's already far, so that's a lot further. I mean,
Sexual exploitation. They're put like in literally what is called in the industry rape racks. They can't move around, and then they
We thought they had
insert the full arm inside of them and grab the cervix to inject the bull semen. And by the way, the bulls are also raped. The bulls, like in order to in order to like obtain the bull semen, sometimes they do it manually. They just jerk them off, or they can insert what is called a electroejaculator into the bull's anus to make. So it's this whole like process of sexual exploitation and slavery and Holocaust, because we end up killing them all at the end. So just let me ask you girls this: like next time you're at the grocery store or whatever, you're buying around your food, are you guys gonna choose the vegan option, or are you gonna choose to torment animals?
it depends on the price. I think.
Do you think life has a price? Like, isn't life priceless? Like,
No, I would agree that life is priceless, but when
You're
you're in a state where you're like financially you can't afford to buy everything vegan, like I don't really know what other option I would have.
And you would have that same attitude in the human context too. Like if you were currently raised eating humans, you would keep eating humans instead of like inconveniencing yourself a little extra to go vegan.
It's not even about it's not about inconvenience. It's if I don't have money to do it, like what do you want me to do? You want me to start robbing the store? It's just so that animal like I agree.
So let's say that. Let's say you didn't have any money.
Okay.
Would that justify eating humans? If your only like economical option was to commit cannibalism, would you do that, or would you say it's obligatory to not do that and perhaps be a little hungry instead of murdering somebody innocent?
Wait, so you're asking me if my only option was to eat humans or not eat, would I do it?
No, let's say that the only option was to eat literally like the stuff you claim you can't eat alone, like rice and beans, lentils, potatoes, or humans. Would you go with the rice and beans, or would you pay for humans to be murdered?
Right. I think you're asking me a completely different question, because obviously I would choose rice and beans, but if I'm in a store and I cannot afford to buy a vegan option, I don't know what I
But
don't know.
that's a vegan option, like
You mean
rice and beans.
Rice and beans?
Yeah.
No, I know, but I'm personally not somebody that could live off rice and beans.
She doesn't like beans.
Yeah, I don't like beans.
there's a lot of
Yeah, but would you in the human context you don't have the same attitude. You would first choose rice and beans, then commit cannibalism, right?
Well, I'm saying in the animal, like,
No, in the human context, would you commit cannibalism for like taste pleasure? Let's say human meat was exactly as tasty as whatever non-vegan products you eat. Would you have those human products for taste pleasure, or would you like stick with the rice and the beans?
if I had other options, obviously I'm not going to eat a human. But like I
Well,
said,
yeah, you're in that situation right now. You have other options. You don't have to exploit animals. You don't have to pay for their exploitation, right?
right, and I don't. I have vegetarian stuff, but sometimes I just can't afford other options and I do have to get animal products. I mean,
Such as dairy,
dairy, yeah.
meats sometimes.
No, I don't eat any
Okay.
type of meat.
Okay.
So,
And you do eat, but so again, let's say we were exploiting humans for dairy. Would you, and let's say that's the only dairy you can get your hands on, it's human dairy, or go for the rice and beans? What would you choose?
what would I need this dairy?
No, you don't need any dairy. So it's like bringing need into this is like a category error. You don't need it in the animal context either.
It's not even for us.
What did you say?
Cow's milk is not even for us. Like,
Yeah, it's for baby cows.
Evolutionarily speaking, become lactose intolerant because it's
baby
not
cows.
necessary to
baby cows.
eat milk, drink milk. Sorry, it's all about the enzymes. But I think it just comes down to how like humane it is, because there are the possibilities of the overpopulation and maybe sterilization is a possibility or maybe it's not. But I think if it's ethically done, like Lana said, my sister, she mentioned, if they're getting old or they're sick and we can use their resources, then why not? Or if they are just randomly laying eggs and it doesn't hurt them to do so, then I think that's okay. But I don't think that they should be exploited. And if it comes down to them either, like there's only two options where they get exploited or we just can't have them at all, then we just can't have them at all. Because you hope that there are these systems and these rules and laws put into place that don't allow that to happen, but people just care about money and they're selfish. And it's like a systematic issue that probably won't be solved for a while because we can benefit off of these animals, and even though there are other alternatives, like how are you going to make people care about things that don't affect them also? Like killing a cow, how is that ever going to affect me? It's all about like morals, and the only way you're going to get people to care is if you make them you place them in the position of these animals, and even if you do, you can like fully acknowledge there are people that acknowledge that these cows and chickens and pigs go through these like horrible conditions just so that they can be eaten by the person thinking about the scenario. But at the end of the day, it's just easier to buy it, and it's just like an afterthought.
Yeah, but I take it you guys aren't selfish, right? You care about other beings, the suffering of others.
I love creatures.
maybe not
Yeah.
enough. 'Cause
Yeah. So the truth is this: there's really two options: is to abuse others or to be vegan, and you have that option. We all have that option right now. There's widely available options nowadays. You claim that it's not sustainable or economical or whatever. I think that's an empirical question. I think if you were to look into it, you would find that it's super easy to be vegan. There's like even like more alternatives every day, and there's cheap alternatives too. So yeah, I just hope you ladies like reflect on this, like try to put yourself in the victim's position, and like next time you're like out shopping, try to choose compassion instead of like murdering others. I asked her, what about you? Like next time you're like you have food like options in front of you, would you choose vegan or would you choose to abuse animals?
At this current stage, I would probably still get chicken just because I love tofu, but I don't. Yeah, because even though I acknowledge it, it's like I'm gonna be honest. It's easier right now. It's easier to get the chicken, and I love tofu, but I don't know how to cook it, and I don't have time to learn how to cook it right now. But I hope that one day and at one point that I will be able to fully become vegetarian or vegan, and that other people can. But it's a really, really layered question on so many different factors, not even just like economics and stuff. So at this current stage, like. Probably not. I'll definitely think about it more and switch over as much as I can. I get this tofu sushi when I'm back home, and it's so good. It's my favorite thing to eat. But that's because I buy it. I don't make it personally, and I honestly buy a lot of food out because, like I said, I can't cook. But one day I hope that I can switch and that other people can too. But right now I think it's more important to move in the right direction and take slow steps. Obviously, acknowledging all this, you can wish and hope that you can change overnight, but that's just not feasible with anything. But I can.
I personally think that's horrible. Like let's think about that in any like other like moral issue. Like let's say somebody was like abusing their wives. Like obviously the right thing to do was to stop doing that. Instead of like taking baby steps to stop. I'm gonna hit her just on Mondays now, or something like that. You know, it's horrible. Like let's face it, what we're doing to animals is horrific. You already admitted that it's morally superior to be vegan, so we're gonna leave you with some footage of what happens to them. Maybe like a single conversation is not gonna do much in the direction of persuading you to go vegan. But maybe if you actually watch what happens to animals, it makes it more visceral, and you can empathize more with them. But yeah, I just hope you reflect on things and choose compassion next time, and go permanently vegan. But anyways, thanks for accepting the conversation, ladies.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, just leave it at that, man. Like, we took enough of their time already. It's just